welcome to another week of O Ship. This week, I have another one of my great friends on, Steven Moy, who I got a chance to know back when we worked together at Sapient Nitro. He was a very clever VP level business lead out of the Boston office that I always really admired. And beyond that, he has impeccable taste in food. So, frankly, I always enjoyed hanging out with him when I got a chance. Since then, he's gone on to do some pretty incredible things. He has been the CEO of Isobar UK. He is currently the CEO of Barbarian Group, an agency I've always admired. He's held roles like the former EVP and CTO of RGA. He is a campaign 40 over 40. He is a campaign A-lister. This is a really bright guy whose mind, if you ever get a chance to peek into it, like today, is always worth your time. And we're going to talk about the changing face of the agency business. Now, I think a lot of this can be about things like the role of an agency and how the business model's been changing. A lot of this can be thinking about maybe the cultural implications of how agencies have shifted over the years, and even more so in the last year, to frankly, even some of the learnings he's got from being now a second round CEO. Which is still some great experience, but still fairly early in his CEO career, and some of the things that maybe he's picked up along the way. So whether you're in the agency business, you're an entrepreneur, you're a consultant, or just generally enthusiastic about leadership and entrepreneurialism, I think you're going to find today's episode super interesting on today's O Ship. Steven, welcome to the show. Glad you're here.
Well, thank you for having me, Freddie.
My pleasure, man.
I mean, I have to talk about that. Just not a competition. But
I have been known to give people light envy. It is a thing that I do now. Apparently, when I was in my 20s and I gave people hair envy, now I give people light envy. That's all I can do. You got to pick and choose your battles now.
I know. Well, thank you for having me.
And, yeah, my pleasure. So where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from Newport, Rhode Island. I'm spending the weekend here for July 4th, so that's why my lighting a little bit.
You don't have to worry about that. I was gonna say that sounds awesome. I haven't left South Florida in a while, so frankly, going any place that sounds like a little bit of a break sounds awesome. Well, today there's so much stuff we can talk about. I feel like, frankly, I can tell the vets could use 3 shows for this, but just to give a little bit of context, I gave you a little bit of a setup in the intro, but it would be really helpful if you could share with our audience a little bit about yourself and your background.
Oh yeah, thank you. So I always divide. I always say caveat, disclaimer about not happen. That's the smartest guy, but happened by luck, and I entered the advertising business. So the first decade, I would consider I actually started off as a software engineer. It was back then with AOL, CompuServe, when internet just came into the picture, and then also I did a lot of e-commerce, like design, architecture, credit card transaction, and then I got an opportunity to join Sapient, and the rest is history, right? Joining more like really groundbreaking digital consultancy way back during the dot-com bubble. Really grew my career there from a tech software engineer into a more client services, helping clients to solve problems.
Sure.
So I spent almost 2 times with Sapient, almost a decade over there.
Wow.
And then I think 2012, that was the time I decided to try something different. I joined Dentsu Isobar. Back then, that was pretty groundbreaking when Dentsu and Aegis, two major holding company merged together, Japanese and also British. And I was fortunate to work with a bunch of CEOs at Isobar and helping them to what's next generation of agency. And of course, the learning from Sapient apply there, creativity and technology always has been very fascinating that to create new things for our client. So I spent 4 years at Isobar. They named me Isobar CEO UK after a couple of acquisitions, how to take a creative agency and e-commerce agency and stitch them together. And then, of course, timing. Very interestingly, I went to UK before Brexit, witnessed Brexit, and then I left. And I got an opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity, to work with Bob Greenberg, the founder of RBA, and I was the first US CTO. The job created by Bob and the executive team to look into how can we help a client using technology to really unlock growth, even more so transforming the business, because a lot of time is more than communication, right? A lot of time we're focusing on advertising, all about communication. And then Bob retired after 2.5 years. I got recruited to take on Barbarian, which is a 20-year-old brand that Freddie, you and I talk about, right? Like came up from Boston, right? Small world. I competed with them many moons ago when I was a Sapien. Always admired their fearlessness. If things not happening, they're gonna create, like Subservient Chicken in 2003 to the Cinder open source platform 2013. So I took on the role to we ignite, and also we introduced Barbarian after 20 years into the market. And I cannot believe it, including COVID. It's been almost 2 years with Barbarian, so really enjoying.
Interesting time to get thrown in the deep end of a CEO role, going through some deep transformation. I want to go back for 2 seconds before we kind of deep dive into this. What was working with Bob Greenberg like, out of interest? He was the CEO. Did you learn anything interesting from him? Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's just iconic. I mean, Bob himself, right, with the presence. When he speaks, everyone listens. Including our client. I'm talking CEO, CMO level. People just want to talk to him. And that's one thing about the presence, about the, right, always at the forefront, with that authority, almost like authority about digital transformation. And remember, like, how they transformed the company from a production. Remember when Bob first started in the 70s with his younger brother, or his brother, they do special effects. I didn't know that until I learned from Bob. The first Predator movie, the heat map, and with Arnold Schwarzenegger, done by LGA.
I did not know that.
Remember the
interesting. That was one of the things I wasn't expecting to learn today, but I'll add that to the list.
Remember the flying Superman logos, Christopher Reeve, the Ray-Ban, that animation done by LJ. So can you imagine, from a film production, also using technology to create different type of experiences and visual effect, and transform into one of the most iconic agency like Nike Plus. Remember all that. They always believe, like, the relationship with Nike, always believe it's not about advertising. It's about the ecosystem you build. When you join the ecosystem, you don't leave. I don't have the advertising. I don't have the advertising.
It's interesting as well, because you could argue that he helped navigate that company through a couple different periods of transformation of the industry, which is also what we're, and he retired before, I'd say, navigating through the next, so the next big evolutions we're talking about now. So I think there's something interesting there. Small tangent, but on the side note.
No, you're right. One thing I would say to talk about RJ, Bob always has a philosophy. He's building an 80% company, never done. So every 9 year, I learned so much from it. Every 9 years,
that's a great lesson right there.
We transformed himself. So that's why when he brought me in, they never focusing on enterprise technology, but all our clients using the usual suspect, like Adobe, Salesforce, and all the marketing tech and then advertising tech. And how can you make it more efficient and effective?
So never done evolving, though. An 80% company. That's cool. My minor Bob story was, there was a time when it felt like Sapien, Nitro, and RGA were constantly pitching against each other, and I was involved with a large chunk of some of the biggest pitches that Sapien Nitro was working on at any given time, or certainly the ones that we'd be likely to be pitching against RGA on. And it happened just multiple times that they would literally come out of a pitch as we'd walk into it, or vice versa. So we'd always be passing each other in the holes. And I don't even, I doubt he knows me by name or remembers me from back then. But back then, I remember we passed each other enough that it's just like, "Hi, Bob." You'd be like, "Hi, Sapien crew," as we kind of go in and out of these pitches against each other. It was pretty funny. It was great fun for everyone. Then I don't think there was any, and it was a very friendly competition, put it that way.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
um, so when you think about how these things have shifted, I worth noting, I've had Michael Lebowitz and Big Spaceship on recently, and some of the folks like Wrecking Ball, who were some of the original co-founders of AgencyNet. A lot of these guys who, like in the early days of, let's say, Barbarian, or even my old agency, IQ Million, where we were doing a lot of this kind of like Wild West digital creative stuff. It was pretty bonkers and pretty off the wall. Then I feel like you went through this phase where everyone got really serious about data, and shocker, people wanted a return on investment for their money, and things got a little bit more controlled. And then I think you and I were together in that period that followed, which was, and I think Sapient really set the tone on this, frankly. People thought they were crazy in the beginning, but then finding this intersection of technology and creativity, I think was really, really big. And then I think you started seeing this kind of next phase where that became more the norm. And then where do you think it kind of went from there? I mean, people have talked about kind of the rise of consultants and things like that. And then frankly, I want to talk. I think you went through that specifically and led some of those, and then I'd like to talk after that about what I think the next big wave is. But if you can kind of give me your take on that, I'd love to get your reaction to it.
Yeah, definitely, right? We are fortunate enough to witness all the technological innovation. Used to be decades. Remember, like the 80s, 90s, and when I talk about, right, in the 70s, the most groundbreaking for financial services, ATM, right? They start rolling out ATM because of the distribution and scale, but took decades. And in 2007, you and I know, like iPhone came about, everything changes. But it's a pace of innovation. It's really accelerating, like since iPhone came about. So you see if you look at the top 10 brands in the world, majority of the technology company, right? The Apple of the world, the Samsung of the world, the Netflix and Google. That shift introducing more digital enabled touch point for brand to build relationship with the consumer. So a lot of time, that's why you see the flip. Remember Forrester Gardner, one time they said the CMO going to spend more money in technology investment. They want to catch up. They want to understand what the new frontier when something got introduced like iPad, right? Or all of a sudden you got like mobile app, like now you have TikTok. How can I build a relationship with the customer? So you see that yin and yang. So that's why you see majority of company now start adopting. They all need to be well versed, even though you don't have to be the system integrator or the the superior technologist, but you have to understand what you're dealing with to build communication, to build commerce and customer relationship management strategy. So that's one thing. Now, the consultancy has an advantage because they came from that world, right? They have always worked with the CIO, long-term relationship, major infrastructure from call center to data farm to all the tech, and they are very well versed with the technology. So all of a sudden, they have an edge coming into the picture. I think that's why a lot of time you see the consultancy really coming into the advertising. Well, you see the collision and the deconstruction of the industry, like Bob always told me. But interestingly, if you think about it, I think, can I touch on next? Because what I believe, you see,
go for it.
like we are very fortunate, right? Freddie, you and I, like, were at Sapient Nitro. They were at one point at the forefront. Oh, let me create a new category about creative and technology together, because those go hand in hand, like over a decade ago. I think the next wave, like if you see all the AI, machine learning, marketing automation, everybody has it. And also all the major player has a lot of innovation can share. Look at Alibaba. Look at Amazon. Single day, 40 billion, whatever, live streaming they've been doing for many, many years. Every minute they generate 500,000, whatever, crazy.
Yeah.
But I think we'll go back to the basic. Assuming everybody it's a must-have to understand the technology competency. What are out there? How you can put an ecosystem, connecting all the ecosystem and data together, so you can build relationship as a brand to the consumer. Let's say you and I all have the same technology. I think it's getting there because with automation, AI, machine learning. I think the next frontier going back is, what we're competing with, Friday? Your brand. Because you and I can launch a new sneaker, right? Go on Alibaba, we can start selling, right? We don't even need a store, right? Where you get on, and then you have all the technology inside Amazon offer, right? Credit card checkout, one-click checkout, like 2-day delivery. Everything is there, even return. Why are they buying our sneaker, right, Freddie? When we compare Nike, because the brand of Nike. So I think it's very interesting, and when you see the market become very the convergence faster for communication and commerce and CRM all together, the technology, everybody get more efficient, new technology coming in, making more affordable. I think we need to go back to ourselves, how you build brands, right? How you connect to the emotional level so people will buy your stuff.
Mhm.
Well,
Why do you think so? Total agreement, and you start thinking about what it takes to be super competitive now. People are getting better and better at all of these different approaches, let's call it, to building their businesses. A lot of people are then trying to shift some of this stuff in house because it's such a big part of what they need to be successful. Um, why do you think people should outsource at this point? Why bring it to an agency versus kind of building some of these capabilities internally?
yeah, it's a great question. I'm seeing that dynamic, right? Like many years ago. I think the specialization, uh,
Mhm.
the innovation side, a lot of time I see a lot of C-level, I was a client calling me or my colleagues in the industry is uh, first they want to understand like with all the new touch point coming in, like from did you see CES, right? Samsung released 5 robots, right? All of a sudden you got like new digital touch point at home too. TikTok, no one even pay attention 2 years ago. All of a sudden you got TikTok, right? All of a sudden all this new digital touch point. So the first question, that's why a lot of consultancy coming in like competing and also
Mhm.
agency creating consulting services. How you identify new territory or new business model or new area for the brand to explore, almost like solving business R&D. What's next for them?
Mhm.
Either preventing extinction or leapfrog your competition. So that's
Mhm.
a lot of new thinking about digital consultancy. How you unpack, identify new territory for you to innovate.
Mhm.
And then also a lot of new things coming in is about like because like when you get in-house setup, it's just like a lot of agency model or maturity model. You talk about efficiency, efficacy, a lot of talk about scalability. But innovation come from is about like how can you mix a lot of different disciplines together and quickly identify an area. So I see a lot of time they will also call agency partner to come in. Hey, I only have a limited budget. I want to actually see even my idea will work or help me to
Mhm.
find an idea so I can go to the board to identify. So agency, I would say a lot of the modern more digital centric agency has the advantage because they've been working on many different brands
Mhm.
around the world, right? Learn something from China, like look at what Alibaba do, like Singles
Mhm.
Day, Class A run, or from Europe to many different countries. So you can bring that back, and also working with uh, the client. And because they don't come with a lot of legacy, war garden, politics, right, line of businesses, so you can come in with a fresh, very connected and fresh perspective to help them to identify new area. I think that's another area that we can help a lot of clients because we don't have a lot of legacy. Sometimes it's a double-edged sword. I don't have the legacy, but that's why I may have different thinking than a lot of in-house agency. So I see that area. I think a lot of new D2C phenomena you see right the last couple of years. I think D2C direct to consumer is a new imperative for any boardroom right now. I'm not suggesting to go cannibalize all your retail channel. I'm saying all the brands should have a direct conversation to their consumer directly.
Mhm.
So a lot of time, if you look at a lot of Fortune 100 companies, they build by line of business, built by function, they may not have the opportunity to look across all the business unit to identify the synergy, the opportunities. So
Mhm.
that's another area I think a lot of agencies can come in and basically connecting the dot, like if you will.
Yeah. What I'm seeing a lot of right now is basically, you're seeing certain companies that say if they don't have enough money to insource it, or they only do a couple activations a year, it makes a ton of sense to go out to an agency. What
Yeah.
I'm seeing is more common, because of the ways that Chameleon Collective sits in a lot of different interim CMO or chief revenue officer kind of roles. We have some pretty good visibility to this. And I
And
think that,
also, I mean, sorry to interrupt you, Friday.
yeah,
I
go
had
ahead.
a lot of time just recently, right? I mean, I can talk freely about it. Like I told you about, we are working with American Express. We are very fortunate.
Awesome, man.
We
Congrats.
thank you. We launched a membership week
Yeah.
during the week of in June. We did it in 6 weeks, and also we can bring that.
Most big companies couldn't get out of their way to do something like that.
Right. I mean, that week, right, we launched every single piece of content every day with different theme, from restaurant with David Chan to Equinox for sports and health. And then the last day we launched it with a Brooklyn, New York brand called New York or Nowhere exclusive capsule collection with American Express. We did live streaming with Instagram, but the whole thing from concept to launch in 5 weeks. And then we sold out everything. So I think the speed, a lot of time, that agility, right? You're not living in the silo organization. Help
Yeah.
a lot of brands to experiment. I think a lot of time it's not about the speed. Is help them. Can I test that out if I'm even on the right track? So that agility and speed, it really speak for itself right now. I see a lot of speed is a new competitive advantage for a lot of brands. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that for someone like Amex, I think that makes total sense. I think some of the other things I'm seeing though is you'll see these basically people trying to pull off the in-housing thing, but when you take an agency like Barbarian, and I mean this is the compliment that's intended to be, there's a certain level of craft that a lot of in-house teams just couldn't pull off. And what I think is challenging and creates the biggest challenge for agencies moving forward, right, is that if you have got a brand that can't attract super A grade talent, because A grade people want to work on A grade stuff, and
Right.
so it may be really hard for people to build these kind of internal teams. But then you get on the flip to that, that means that some of the most desirable brands that agencies might want to work with, or then it could be quite challenging because those people have the highest likelihood to maybe try and bring some of this stuff in house. It's a tricky time, I think, for agencies. And you said one word earlier that really just kind of clicks for me, which is, I think, this specialization. Trying to stay away from the generalist. In internal teams, people want to bring in all these generalists, and that makes sense for your core team. But these incredible specialists, frankly, are worth paying a premium for. And outsourcing. So I'm intrigued. I'm going to ask you two questions. I'm going to test your thinking here. Let's start with the current, and then I'm going to compare it to the past. What would you say is the best thing about leading an agency in 2021?
Oh wow. It's I remember I was telling you, like, I mean,
Yeah,
even though I went to business school and engineering school, there's
yeah,
no book to tell you how to be a better CEO through
yeah.
the pandemic, before the pandemic, and after the pandemic. Seriously, there's no instruction manual. I hope that's what I'm telling you. How do you handle when the whole country, the world locked down, and then you have all the social pandemic as well, all the changes. I think the best. I think the best is, with all the pent-up demand, we survive, and can claim victory that out of the pandemic. I think there's a lot of new element we should consider, meaning
Mm,
people willing to try more, like experiment. During the pandemic, I remember I did a study for Samsung, one of my clients. When you did the consumer research, right, the first 3 months, right, number one selling, grocery item, I was shocked too, like not toilet paper or the other one, actually baking mix. So the
no
first,
kidding.
really, yeah, because you got
Add that to my list of the second really random interesting thing earlier today.
everybody start baking. So, and also and then remember that was the time like social commerce, really live streaming came to the US market, at least I can say, right? All of a sudden, because you got stuck on you consuming more content, and then you see, oh, that's acceptable because I can no longer that. All of a sudden, you see a new wave of leaders in the agency world and also in the brand side. You see a lot of people willing to try stuff out. So in 2020, we launched a Mucinex Sigwear in 4 months, right? Like launch a fashion line for over-the-counter drug. We want to reach the Gen Z during the pandemic, fashion show, YouTube Live, direct to consumer. We try that out. So that learning can apply to this year. So that's why I said, just in talk about American Express, we were able to apply that learning and do it in 6 weeks again, right, for that. But I think there's a lot of new behavior that for the customer side of the house that people are willing to try new things.
That's such a great point.
Right.
I love this idea because I think, I was going to ask you what was the best thing about being in a leading digital agency in 2011. So kind of going back 10 years, but don't answer that just yet.
Yeah.
My thinking though is that one thing that's so exciting about maybe some of the times we've talked about in the past was that there was this kind of Wild West kind of thinking, and you're right. I'm seeing the same trend where I think maybe because 2020 just kind of blew up everything, that everyone all of a sudden is like, well, yeah, let's experiment. Let's try new things again. Not all the rules have been broken. And I'm seeing, I hadn't explicitly thought about it until you said it, but yeah, I'm seeing that same trend, and it's kind of awesome, honestly. Just to be able to go out there and suggest something that that isn't in the normal playbook, and then because they said, well, someone burned the old playbook down last year. So.
Well, I mean, one thing we all know, right? The new should be more forefront and forward before the pandemic. Now is the time, right? We truly talk about DEI, right? Diversity, inclusion, and equality. All right, that's a lot of. I really believe the new wave. When your company is more diverse, you have more cross culture, cross religions, any thinking, right? Good thinking from any people, any color people. I think that will pave the new path for innovation. Because you think, remember, I think, did I tell you, like if you're traditional, you ask me, hey, how you design for a digital native? Before the pandemic, we would talk about digital native. Well, typically, college educated can buy $1,000 phone, either Samsung or iPhone, and then when you design everything, but if you look at that profile, majority, can I be candid? Majority is more white and affluent crowd because people can afford the phone, and also when you look at the demographic in US, I was telling you, like I did a talk for the Drum. They said, hey, what do you think about this? Even our ecosystem has a systemic stereotype, which is true. If you go to Google, do a Google search on images, you type in Chinese food, or soft fried rice and egg roll. Nothing wrong with that, but we offer more, right? Even our index engine is taught that way, right? So how can you really create something is truly innovative for all access, all level, and for all people, right? I think that is a lot of new learning, a lot of executive at the brand could learn, right? Remember shutdown. I mean, I remember one study, they were telling me like, how many 40% of the US population is hourly wage, and like crazy amount of population of single parent. And during lockdown, those school, a lot of the internet, they don't even have Wi-Fi at home. The only internet access is the phone that the parent has. They have to go to the mall and get access to school. Think about that, Freddie. So I think that's an opportunity. Now you should design, new universal access based on a really diverse world that we should be helping the client to think through. Right? I think that's a lot of new opportunity for brand really can produce.
So echoing some of this sentiment, but with his own spin on it, we just had a comment pop up in chat from Winston Binch, who, of course, we both know is a chief brand officer at Gill Partners. I met him when he was one of the partners at Crispin Porter and Bogusky. He went on to be the chief digital officer of Deutsch in LA. Really, really smart guy. And he commented that the complexity of what we do has grown dramatically since we first started out. You get nowhere interesting unless you take some time to think critically about the landscape and the challenges we're up against as marketers, agency leaders, and brand builders. Great point of view, Winston, and thank you so much for commenting and tuning into OSHIP. Um, jumping back into where we were at, he talked about the kind of where we started. So just for fun, what was the best thing about being in a leading digital agency 10 years ago versus today?
Well, I think uh, at least my humble opinion, I have a relatively smaller setup, and I can make decisions quite fast. And I always have a philosophy: go try something out. So I think the at least my client, my opinion, really demanding a new type of digital agency to help them to really identify, unlock growth, and also identify new innovation area for them to go try in the market. And I think one thing. Second will be uh, there's a lot of new area our client really want to try new things, and so make my team very excited. Like from e-commerce innovation, e-commerce has been 2 decades, but you see the latest statistic and people really try new things. So for talent retention and attractiveness for a lot of talent, I do have a portfolio working on those type of projects. That's very interesting. And also you know, you and I talk about it, right? We live through a lot of different cycle of agency world, from Sapien to many different world. And I really want to be helping a client in a way that is more focusing on transforming the business, like in a sense, is prevent extinction or live up the competition. So I would say I would love to create the future faster. That's my tagline. So I always believe that I can help a client create the future faster. But also for the industry, right? And if you can produce live streaming like what we did for Amex in 6 weeks, and you put a lot of pressure into the industry for programs. If you really thinking about you want to build an e-commerce solution, going to take 2 years, you should have second thought. So I think that brand new world about speed and also fast would become another element that I can play at least as a leader with a smaller and nimble agency. Uh, I know, man, I may not giving you the best answer, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, no, well, actually, I was going to say, I think that's a great way to segue over to talking about, I think, your own transformation of the business that you're leading now. And I think there's some general themes that that apply to the whole industry. I have to ask, just on a fun level first, Barbarian Group, famously or infamously, depending on how you want to look at it, has this kind of legendary table that runs through the office that I remember always geeking out on, seeing the photos. If any of those of you haven't seen it, it's this kind of beautiful, almost art-like snake that goes through the whole office, goes over hallways, and basically everyone was supposed to be able to sit at it. So it's this concept of kind of mass collaboration. I think there's something really interesting about that in a world where last year everything got completely blown up and no one was able to go into an office, and everything all of a sudden was like virtual collaboration and so on. And I'd just be interested to know, like, how has the concept maybe of collaboration at Barbarian Group evolved? Frankly, due to the pandemic, or just or maybe that plus the evolution of the industry.
Yeah, good question. I still have the desk. Welcome to visit me. Still have the desk.
I've never seen in person. I'd love to see in person. So.
Still a little the color, a little faded, but I still have the desk. You're totally correct. Basically, everybody should have a seat to the table and kind of like you're all connected to the desk. I think the pandemic really forced a lot of people to start thinking about how to work collaboratively using digital technology like video conferencing, Slack, and all the tools. I think one thing we were fortunate because of our relationship with our parent company, Shell Worldwide. So Barbarian has been designing all the product detail pages, e-commerce for all the flagship Samsung phone launches for a decade. So we got a little more accustomed to working remotely with multi-people, multi-time zone, multi-region. So for us to transition, that was pretty easy for us during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. One thing we learned, a couple of things adopting the concept. Well, we did a launch for NARS, which is a Shiseido beauty brand. And we ended up during the pandemic launching them, helping them to get on Tmall exactly over a year ago. We had to learn how to do Zoom or Slack remote directing people to do photo shoot. So that's a new learning, how you create content with remotely. That's interesting. We did innovation sprint. Used to be, remember good old days, you just go in, invited, all your client into a big room with whiteboard, and then you innovate. We learned how to do it over Zoom or any video conferencing platform. Not easy. Took a while, like, how you share concepts. So we quite a lot of over communication, leveraging the best tool for whiteboarding. They do have software allow that breakout room by Zoom if you're using Zoom or any other technology. But also really have to force you to prepare more. So we adopted that with a lot of great learnings. I think right now we are doing planning right now. We are talking about reopening in New York City. So we're going to do a hybrid model, like 2 days come in, so we can do workshop, meeting clients, and we also allow people working from home. Because I think the new world is you don't have to necessarily sit together, as long as you can figure a way to do it. But certain things cannot replace. I do agree with you, Freddie, right? I would love to meet my client in person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a culture aspect of this I want to touch on. We do have a nice question just popped in from the audience. Andrew Goldman wants to ask you. He said, if you had to choose, what is the bigger threat to successful leadership? Other agency competition, which can slow business growth for your firm, or client lag and transformational business challenges, which can slow your ability to lead in evolutionary ways?
Oh, wow. Great questions. I think being a second time CEO, to be honest with you, can I be candid? At least my learning, I'm still learning. It's yourself.
Mm,
Uh, I constantly asking myself, how can I be a better leader? Should I be better listener, better mentor, better coach?
mm,
Or this time around, I have to only can speak for myself. I learned how to drop my ego. Uh,
mm.
we all have a little ego or certain preferences.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's yourself as a leader, at least in my category. I would say you have to start listening. You have to know that you don't have all the answers. You have to listen to your team or your client because they are closer to the problem. So I think if I have to say, I see all the competition from consultancy, tech company coming in, all the agencies transforming themselves, become more digital and marketing,
Mm,
tech savvy. But I think leadership, I would go back to the root, is all about yourself. How can you be a better leader? Listening, act, show example. The good old days, leadership still work, but I think with action, you have to really listen to the people and act upon it and lead by example.
mm,
At least my opinion. My
mm,
opinion.
mm. I think, and echoing that, but answering some parts, I think, in a different way. One of the things that Andrew mentioned was this kind of challenge of client lag, stopping you from being an industry leader. And I want to be honest and clear and say what I'm about to say sounds really great if you have so many clients that you can pick and choose how you want. So I want to be clear and say I understand that not everyone has this luxury, but if you do have the ability to pick and choose your clients, and you have a lot of opportunity, whether you're an agency or a consulting firm or whatever your professional service is, I would say that if a client is too slow or creates a lag and is not able to keep up with the pace that you feel that you have the potential to create, and you don't want to just staff up and keep them and bring on more clients, I recommend you change your clients. So this is not a matter of competition. I think this is a willingness to say no to certain clients, and so where I think Steven directly answered like the internal leadership side of it. I think there's an opportunity cost to having clients who aren't willing or able, more frequently is actually the problem, to change or evolve or to do great work at. And I'm very I'm in a kind of a stage in my, I don't want to call it my career because I think I've still got a long way to go in it, but certainly in my life, where like I only want to do interesting and good things, and I've realized that every client that I let bog me down is actually preventing me because my time is limited, right? That's the one thing that's all finite for all of us. That is the one thing that I need to get rid of these people so I can open the world to possibilities. there, and that's how I think you stay competitive if you want to work on all the kind of best stuff that is out there. So I want to go back to, and Andrew, thank you for that question. That was great. So I want to go back to the territory of culture and ask one more question there, and then I've got a couple more questions about being a CEO I'd like to ask you before we run out of time today. What do you think the role of a CEO is in developing and leading the culture? Well, I don't even say leading, developing the culture for a business. Because maybe it's not about leading. Who knows? You know, I don't want to take you down any one direction.
Yeah, very good question, because actually I'm going through that right now. Like when you have a lot of new talent joining and joining the agency, and it's interesting. I believe at first we have to start with the definition of a culture. Right? I truly believe it's a core set of value that help cultivate certain behavior, how you want your company to behave, right? We at Barbarian, at least I can speak for Barbarian. Remember good old days when we were a Sapien, they always the core values, which is still timeless in many, many aspects. And kind of like that, right? The guiding principle. So for us, it's about, at least I'm going through that right now because like half of my team is new, because the explosive growth we hire a lot of new people, allow you to learn and absorb new culture element and keep on refining. So I would say culture is not static; it's a dynamic component of the company, and you really want to create an environment that people can also collaborate and elevate the culture. So we started with some ethos or guiding principle or core values, at least what we talk about, to help me to think, make decision, and also help me to make sure we're recruiting the right people to join the company. First is we are here to make our client famous. I think you know what I mean. Like, it's a little bit different than a lot of my colleagues out there or other people. Historically, that's a perception about advertising agency, all about going to win an award. No, our job is making them famous.
Yeah,
we're more like an unsung hero than focusing on the spotlight. So I think that's a little subtle difference for us. We always make it when that doesn't exist. The second component, we make it. So I like that more entrepreneurial, innovative, or fearlessness culture, right? Hey, we think about eventually we're going to have a flying robot or teleportation, right? Imagination help. If that's not exist, why don't we experiment and try it? So I always encourage. We need people aligned with that. Like there's sometimes new territory may not be a brief out there because our client don't know what they're looking for. We are describing the new world. So you need people. I need people to fit that. So also evolving that. So that whole about fearlessness, and also the more entrepreneurial. And when it doesn't exist, we make it. And then also, I think that there's a new wave of collaboration. I would say I think the DEI movement or the focus helped. In the past, right, you talk about diversity. I mean, I think it's a new foundation. Everybody should be diverse. We are 3% certified. It took a while for us to certify. Only 8 companies in the US got certified, meaning we really balance. I think that's a new table stake. Remember, I talked about innovation, and you really have to understand, like equality and inclusion. So in our new culture, or evolving culture, is diversity for already part of our DNA. But we just set up workshop about inclusion and equality. So inclusion, I think require a new definition in the world. Not only just having diverse team, inclusion meaning you have to listen, and also allow everybody with different background and philosophy or whatever belief system they have to have a shared voice, listening. Like also listen, like really listening and incorporate. You can debate, but I think inclusion you have to start allowing so many different elements. You and I know that sometimes the most creative people are actually technologists because they're working with like coding something or putting a drone together. So I think a lot of new creativity can come in. And then equality. I talk about equality. I truly believe equal pay doesn't matter what people, what gender.
And that's where you can kind of set the culture through basically policy. And I think there's this other side that's like the soft side of it. If you saw me snickering a second ago, wasn't it your answer, by the way? It was me flickering through my mind that I was like, yeah, this is much better, where I feel like, 10 years ago, the whole agency culture was effectively defined by how good was your alcohol tolerance and could you go out with your friends without embarrassing yourself? Because I feel like it was such a boozy industry. I think it's still, a little bit of a boozy industry, but that can't be the defining quality of certainly, some of these agencies, especially, the younger part of the agency culture. I don't think kind of like it used to be, for better or for worse. So I've got two more questions I want to ask you. You've been a CEO twice now. You had a run at Isobar, and then you had your second CEO run, head first right into one of the worst, pandemics or global catastrophes in the last 100 years. What would you say? What has changed for you the most as a CEO? So when you think about what the CEO you used to be and the CEO you are this time, is there like a simple kind of fundamental change that has occurred in you in any way, shape, or form?
I totally. Remember when I first took the first CEO job, there's a lot of inherent expectation.
Yeah.
He knows it all, or she knows it all. The CEO knows it all.
Mm.
The second time during the pandemic, it's okay to acknowledge I really don't know the answer. Right, the whole world lockdown. We never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
And then you see all the BLM, all the different unrest coming out. Like I still remember, even though I'm Asian American, like I'm people of color, during those period of time, I really never experienced anything like that, right? Life. So I learned this knowledge you really don't know. I think that actually that authenticity helped, and getting connected with your people and your client as well. So I think that's one thing. You don't know what you don't know is fine. Acknowledge it, right? Being a human, Second, as I mentioned earlier, I ask myself constantly, because it used to be, I remember the first time I was CEO, I think, I know all the answer. And then of course, right, you make mistake along the way. So the second round is, I really don't know the answer. Let me listen to the people more, because they actually, in the action day to day, they can provide more insight for you to make better decisions. So I started working, really listening, and that way, like really factor in everything decision I make. And then third is, I don't like bureaucracy, so you should be able to make decision and try it. So having that experimental trial and error culture is okay. I think with new world order we're living in, because like, for example, how would we know, like, we talk about like Olympic, like now they're doing televised, right? Like, so new world order. So I think still learning, and I think the world really. I would really recommend someone can write a book about how to be a better CEO. I would warn you to go write it. Another thing I know most, I've been looking for instruction manual. That's no issue.
Yeah, I've been trying to look for one for 20 years as well, so I feel your pain. So I'm gonna ask one last final question. It wouldn't be oh ship if I didn't ask for an oh ship moment, whether that's something that's happened in the past, or and further back in history, or frankly even the last whatever 16, 17 months we've been going through this, your newest leadership role. Is there any kind of oh ship moment you can share where maybe things went a little bit off the rails, and you guys were able to, or you or your team was able to kind of recover from it, whether you learned something from that, it was inspiring, or maybe it's just funny at this point, maybe not funny at the time, that you can share with us?
I That's a many moment newness.
You're like, let me get the 20, 50 of those you can think of.
Well, I think it's interesting. We used to do our every week we have like a more like a happy hour, like getting people together. I still remember we like very easy for us, like the big desk, and we just like every Thursday 5 o'clock, wine and beer coming out. Not saying we, it's just celebration. They get very used to it. I still remember we tried something new when the pandemic hit. That turned out at first was successful, and then we got Zoom fatigue. Very interesting. We started working with the local restaurant, got Sommier, got on the Zoom call for us to do a wine tasting. I mean, helping the local business when people out of job, and we did that. We got covered by one of the like Egg Week, or I forgot what it was like. That was pretty new. Like we tried something new, but then of course like we learned how many Zoom call you can join, right? You that fatigue and the drop off rate. So we constantly calibrate. Are we picking the right topic? And how can we refresh, get people engaged? So we learning that. And when we do town hall, typically we just get gathering. And again, right, like I remember I did one town hall only by myself in the office. We're dialing it.
That's a ship for you. You're like,
Right,
oh,
that
that
dynamic
didn't work out very well.
uh, I I remember, yeah. So a lot of crazy moments. Of course, like as I mentioned, right? Even pitching. Remember, that's one thing is how you create pitch theater through
Yeah,
this. Now, actually, can I be candid? Actually,
yeah,
became my advantage because we're smaller. I only have the
yeah.
big. I'm not my big.
It's really interesting.
Now
Yeah,
they compete with personality. I do have a pretty
yeah,
strong,
you do. Yeah, it's
right?
awesome.
So I think now that's why a small agency can compete with the biggest one,
Yeah,
through Zoom. So I think that's a lot of new expectation for CEO. You
yeah,
have to be pretty charismatic, at least
yeah,
my
yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, but they're not gonna. No one's gonna overpower you just because they've got the shiniest office, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
it's about, do you have content?
yeah,
Do you
yeah,
have the
yeah,
personality? And
yeah.
also, can you really connect with the client?
And preferably not zooming them from your bedroom. As long as you got that, you should be good.
Exactly. So
Well,
I think those are the old shit moments I find out, oh, I can
I
compete
love
now.
that.
Because people say, hey,
I
Steve, I
love
like
that.
you on Zoom.
That's great.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's compete. Like, so
That's
that
great.
that at least my opinion.
Well, I'm gonna use that as a perfect way to end. The good news is, unlike that town hall, we had lots of people show up to OSHIP today. I want to say a special thank you to the people watching who submitted questions. We love answering people live on there. If you've got questions, please share them. Um, for those of you watching, whether you're watching us live or you're watching us on after the show on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Facebook or Periscope. We're even broadcasting on Instagram today. Wherever you're watching this video, the best thing you can do to support the show is subscribe, give us a like, share it with your friends, anything you can to engage with the content. That's all we look for. And we'll keep producing great content like this week after week and bringing on really amazing guests like Steven. If you want to learn more about Barbarian Group, check out wearebarbarian.com. And you check out all the amazing work they've been doing, and hopefully soon you'll be able to see some of this new Amex work that he was talking about earlier. Steven, I just want to say thanks again. It's great to see your face. Always fun to hear your stories, and I'm really excited for your new CEO role, and great seeing all the great things you and Barbarian are going to do together.
Well, thank you, Freddie. And can I talk about one point? I didn't know
Yeah,
it's
go for it.
so when you invited me, say, hey, Stephen, you want to do a talk? I say, oh, of course. Right.
Yeah.
The next day is when you're live, but I'm having so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was great. You were wonderful, and again, thank you to everyone watching, and I hope to see you next week on No Ship. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.